person that I follow and find really inspiring asked this question recently in his newsletter. Is it equal if both people are giving their max, but one has a higher capacity spiritually? And I got really intrigued into diving into this topic. So stay with me and let's explore this together. So let's start with, how do I know that I have a higher capacity spiritually? How can I tell? How do I measure that? Is it by upholding my values, living with integrity, believing that I have more self awareness than other people or a particular person? Perhaps there might be some external signs that a person is more spiritual, such as having a spiritual practice, doing good, such as spreading love rather than fear in this world, or giving things selflessly. However, I don't believe that there is anything such as completely selfless act on this planet Earth. I do believe that our souls are selfless because we are all connected. But until we are caught up in duality of this world, I don't believe that we can be fully selfless. And especially ever since I've read Anthony's de Mello book, Self Awareness, that's how I think. And please, if you have any other thoughts that you would like to share on this subject, I would love to hear them. So just type in the comment section and let this conversation going. Okay. So what is then important for me in relationships? Say that let's just assume that I have a bigger spiritual capacity, however, whatever that means, than the other person. So do I want to challenge them or do I want them to challenge me? Am I satisfied with what is and am I even allowing them to be who they are without thinking that I know what they need more than they do? And I want to pause here for a moment because this part is crucial. Oftentimes in relationships, we think that we know best what the other person is or who they should be. And there are two things to consider here. First one, I totally understand that we might be coming from the most loving and caring intention. I really do. However, each person has their own journey, and if they survive all these years without our intervention, chances are that they will still be able to do the same. So, unless you or I, or let's say we, are asked by the other person to help them out, let us be an example. Let's live our lives and let that speak volume to them. And also, the other thing is when we think what other person need or when we cannot accept that part, there is shadow at play. There is something in that person that triggers us that we cannot fully grasp or find compassion within our own heart. And that's subject for another day. But let me share something from my life. When I was in my 20s, I had a period in which I believed that I was more spiritually evolved. I was what I was thinking, doing everything right. I was on a vegetarian diet. And by the way, I have nothing against vegetarian diet. I find it's really great. It works for some people and it doesn't for others. So I meditated. I thought that I was doing all the right things, thinking positively, and you probably know the drill, right? However, little did I know, I was only masking my sense of low self-worth and insecurities at the time. And looking back, I'm not proud of that period. However, it was needed. I needed to experience that contrast in order to understand this game of duality of superiority and inferiority. And this kind of ties up with, do you really believe that something is ahead of you, or are you ahead of something? Even if we look at dualities, it all comes back to a circle. And perhaps everything in this universe is spiral, like we see in the nature, Fibonacci sequence. So maybe there is nothing that is actually ahead. Perhaps we are just traveling on this spiral, rising and falling. And when we see something from a higher perspective, what can happen is that person gains maybe higher understanding, and that can come across or materialize as more compassion, understanding, and curiosity. And I would also add love to equation. So when a person assigns themselves a bigger capacity for one area of their life, perhaps they lack in another area. And is that a bad thing? Am I less evolved? Have I lesser capacity? Am I less important? No, everyone is important. Perhaps we are all just attending different classes, and that's all. It's like saying that swimming is more important than flying. For who? Maybe for a whale. Swimming is the best and most natural action. But for an eagle, not so much. So, just an idea or invitation. Perhaps focusing on spiritual capacity, what we can examine is how much are we in the flow? Are our mind and heart in coherence? Do you allow yourself to desire things? Or are you willing to receive? Or are you more comfortable just with giving or the other way around? Because sometimes this spiritual capacity or this illusion, I would say, that we have higher spiritual capacity can also materialize as thinking that we should have certain desires or making certain desires wrong. And that's not the way to go. And I'm not saying that that's always the case, but I can see that that can be the case because it's almost like that becomes if something is my identity, then I might judge certain desires or wishes that might not fall into the realm of that identity, but they are still there and they're equally important. So, coming back to our hearts, does your heart care if you have higher capacity than someone else? Or does your heart really wishes to connect? And maybe that's something that can determine whether you want to spend more time with someone because you feel more connected, because you can expand your energy, you can expand your love for them, you can expand your values, you can be and embody a person that you want to be. And then when that happens, spiritual capacity or any other capacity doesn't really matter because you feel fulfilled inside. And it's not so much about your mind, but it's really about your heart. Because in the end of the day, it's really our heart which leads the way. Let me know what you think. Thanks for listening.